You have got to be kidding me with the latest Jonathan Kuminga news. You're watching Golden State Warriors today, if you know, you know, by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Tyler Smith, and we have some big-time Jonathan Kuminga injury news to discuss. As yes, we didn't do a live stream last night because I was in the building in Dallas, Texas for Warriors versus Mavs, and I saw Jonathan Kuminga get hurt in the second quarter of that game. So Kuminga back on the injury report here. As in the second quarter, he was fouled driving to the basket and ended up falling awkwardly on the leg of Mavericks guard Brandon Williams with about 4 minutes to go in that second quarter. And he ended up going to the line after he sat on a chair courtside, had to kick a little girl out of her seat to sit down there, and ended up taking the 2 free throws. He made both of them, funny enough. And then he limped around for a couple of possessions. He tried to run up and down the floor, clearly wasn't feeling it all too much, asked out of the game, and then ended up limping to the locker room with trainers. So not good news there. They ruled him out with a ankle injury for the rest of the game, but then we came to know that it was also a knee injury as well for Kuminga. Now, Anthony Slater reported in his recent article that it is not believed to be serious, neither issue with the ankle or the knee, so that's good news there. But it didn't necessarily talk about a timeline in that article, so I ended up looking through a couple of tweets, and Dalton Johnson ended up saying that it's not expected to be a extended period of time missed for Jonathan Kuminga. So hopefully, at the most, here a couple of games, so teams aren't completely scared off of a Jonathan Kuminga trade. We just cannot escape the BS with Jonathan Kuminga. Part of the reason that it was getting DMPs from Steve Kerr for a month was literally for this reason. We could not have this happen. We could not have Jonathan Kuminga get hurt before the Warriors decided to try to make a trade for him before the 2026 deadline that's coming up in literally less than 2 weeks now. So this is just another chapter in the long story between the Golden State Warriors and Jonathan Kuminga. Not good at all. Now, Marc Stein of the Stein line has had the following to say about the whole situation. Sources say that the Warriors, faced with the abrupt loss of Jimmy Butler, were poised to expand Kuminga's role from the 21 minutes he played Tuesday against Toronto in the hope that it broadened his trade market. Kuminga scored 20 points against the Raptors. Kuminga also scored 10 points in the Mavericks game. He on 3 of 3 shooting. I mean, it was awesome to see him kind of get into a little bit of a groove here now with the expanded role, and it was only going to increase here over the next 2 weeks or however else long he was going to be on the Golden State Warriors, as Jimmy Butler is going to be missing the rest of this 25-26 season. But speaking of missing time, Jonathan Kuminga missed time last year as well now with a ankle injury, a sprain that took 2 months, January 6th to March 13th. It was unbelievable. And then he never really fit back into the roster once Jimmy Butler was added. Steve Kerr has come out and said multiple times, and just recently 2 days ago, that the reason that Kuminga hasn't been playing as much over this last month, which I think is a cop-out answer, by the way, but it is partly true, is that Jonathan Kuminga does not fit well next to Jimmy Butler. And it's tough for those two guys to be on the floor at the same time. Well, now with Kuminga on the floor without Jimmy Butler these last 2 games, I mean, the 30 minutes played, he had 30 points scored, 10 of 13 from the field. He hit 1 of 3 from deep range. 6 rebounds. He was attacking the glass. And it was really awesome to see him work in short spurts, especially in that Raptors game, because Kerr has also come out and said that Kuminga's not a player who's very good in short spurts. Well, he was in that game, and he was in the Mavs game as well as he entered in the middle of that first quarter. This just sucks, man. This really stinks. And the question we have to ask ourselves now is, how has his trade value been affected with the Warriors trying to make a deal here in the next few weeks, if at all? Because another thing that we heard during Kuminga's long stint on the bench was that this wasn't really going to affect the team's perception of Jonathan Kuminga. They kind of knew what he was already. Well, he was really kind of showing out over these last 2 games and maybe could have painted a little bit of a different picture for these teams trying to trade him. Now, we don't know if that's going to be the case here with just a few games to go until the NBA trade deadline, like 5 or 6 away. Anthony Slater saying the following: the trade deadline is in 2 weeks, and Kuminga's animosity toward the organization remains, according to league sources, as does his desire to be traded elsewhere in the near future. So he doesn't want to be in Golden State, and he wants to be somewhere else. We've known this. This has been a thing for the longest time. I've literally made over 100 videos on it. That's great and all, Jonathan Kuminga. Like, I get it, but if you guys remember what Mike Dunleavy said a couple of games ago, for there to be a demand, there must be a demand on the market. For us to make a trade, somebody has to want to make the trade with us, and that's the case with every deal they need to make in the NBA. But specifically with this guy, there just isn't a lot of trade interest out there. Who wants to trade for a guy who was DNP'd for a month, and now he's got back-to-back seasons with lower leg injuries? And then I had decided, has Kuminga actually had other leg injuries. I feel like I've seen him on the shelf a couple of times throughout his career, other than the 2 months that he missed last year and now this new injury this year. Well, as a matter of fact, in his rookie year, he missed 3 weeks with a knee injury. In 2023, he missed 3 weeks with a foot injury. In 2024, he missed, that's around a week and a half, with a knee injury. In 2025, actually at the beginning, in last year, that was the 2 months, missed it with a big ankle sprain. And then at the beginning of this season, in November, he missed 2 weeks with a knee injury. And that doesn't really bode well for a player who relies a lot on athleticism, a lot on his bounce, jumping up a lot of up and down a lot of times, jumping on those knees a lot. Doesn't seem like a player with this track record already on the injury report that's going to be the best long-term prospect in the NBA. It doesn't seem like he's going to develop much past his athleticism, and with all these injuries, it's going to be a real harbor on the rest of his career. Now, we've also know the reports have said Golden State's okay keeping him past the deadline. They view that team option as an asset. That's a bunch of horseshit. Look, they are okay keeping him past the deadline because nobody's going to trade for him and nobody's going to give him anything. Of course, they're going to be okay keeping him because his trade value literally could not get any lower if they're not willing to deal him. That means his trade value is so low that they wouldn't even give him away for pennies on the dollar. So it just makes no sense to me here. Chris Haynes also came out and said that Jonathan Kuminga has zero desire to stay on the team. What do we do now? I honestly have no clue. I don't know where Golden State goes with this. Kuminga is clearly in a state where I'm not so sure he'll want to even be out there on the court and risk further injury. So this is probably it for Jonathan Kuminga. Like, he's probably not going to go play. Even if he's not out for a significant amount of time, there isn't a significant amount of time until the trade deadline. So we'll see if a team ends up biting. We'll talk about some potential other trade targets that Golden State could go after here in a moment. But let me know. Will the Warriors find a trade for Jonathan Kuminga? Y for yes, and for no. Predict it for me. Get your crystal ball out. And let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section if Jonathan Kuminga is going to get traded or not. Coming up next, we're going to talk about a new trade target for the Golden State Warriors. And is it new? Maybe new to some if you became a fan this season, but could be a familiar face coming back to town. We'll talk about it in a second. First, though, I'll tell you guys about our sponsor on the show. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy sports app in the game. And with the big game coming up, you better take advantage of all the deals and the last chance to get in on the football action this season. With Prize Picks, the best daily fantasy sports app in the game, where it's always good to be right. All you guys got to do is pick 2 to 6 players and pick more or less on their projected stats. Whether it's basketball, football, college sports, it doesn't matter. You can mix and match all these different sports on Prize Picks and win up to 2,000 times your money in one single lineup. It's the best because of the features that they offer, like stacks. So if you want to take multiple stat projections from one player and put it in the same lineup, you can do so only on Prize Picks. They also offer a new feature called early payouts. So if one of your players gets off to a hot start or your lineup just gets off to a really, really good start, you may have the option to cash out those winnings before the games even finish. My lineup for this weekend is as follows because I'm taking advantage of the football action. Drake May, more than 222.5 passing yards. Matthew Stafford, more than half an interception. And then Rashid Shaheed, less than 22.5 receiving yards against that good Rams defense. You can tell my picks or fade them. Just do it at Prize Picks. Download the app today and use the code CLNS to get $50 in lineups instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Is Andrew Wiggins coming back to the Bay Area? You know what's funny? We haven't talked about it too much on the show, but it has been reported or rumored a couple times before that a reswap of Jonathan Kuminga for Andrew Wiggins could potentially be on the table at some point. Now, Marc Stein of the Stein line saying it's got some serious legs. He said the following in his article called My Day with the Golden State Warriors. League sources tell the Stein line that one avenue which will certainly be explored is the prospect of a Kuminga for Andrew Wiggins swap with the Miami Heat that potentially brings Wiggins back to the Bay Area after he was shipped to South Beach last February for Jimmy Butler. Time is a flat circle, whether it's GP2, whether it's Wiggins, whether it's anybody. Like, Golden State's going to bring their guys back. But I also think that this is a situation where they're getting a little bit desperate. And Wiggins hasn't been a guy who has kind of been in the trade rumblings for Golden State as of late. So now that this injury is coming along and maybe Wiggins isn't playing as well as he had at the start of the season, maybe Golden State's going to say, wow, Miami is looking for a little bit more youth injected into their lineup. And they're not going to win anything with Andrew Wiggins on the team, so why not take a flyer on Jonathan Kuminga, 23 years old, with a bunch of athleticism and a potential? It's a thought. Wiggins has been floated out there as a trade candidate for the Miami Heat by some reporters this season as well. So I think it's absolutely on the table. And what would Golden State be getting? Well, I think you guys know. He's basically the same player. But I'll tell you right now, he has been in a spot where he's done a little bit more on the ball work this season. Like a couple of like sick highlight reels by Andrew Wiggins, like working in the mid range, giving guys some work with his bag of tricks and pulling up for jump shots. You didn't see that a ton in Golden State. He was really run as an off the ball player. Just given how Golden State's offense is run, but he would slide right back in to that role, and I think he would bring a little bit more an initiation and creation to his game this time around with the Golden State Warriors, given the fact that Jimmy will be gone, Jonathan Kuminga is going to be gone, and there isn't anybody else on the roster that can dribble and shoot. So Wiggins would be a very prominent piece in this Warriors roster if he were to be traded for. But the reality with Andrew Wiggins is like he's not going to get you over the top. You're not going to be contending for the West with swapping Jonathan Kuminga for Andrew Wiggins at this point. The season's a wash. I don't want to like be too doom and gloom about it, but it's the reality of the situation. Sure, anytime Steph's out there, you can win, but they just lost to Najee Marshall and Max Christie and Brandon Williams. Dwight Powell. Oh yeah, Dwight Powell cooked you on Wednesday night or Thursday night. I mean, you're not winning a title this year. It's the reality of the situation, but I do disagree with those folks who say, they should just do nothing then. No, they absolutely should still do something. And Andrew Wiggins is something, but it's not going to get you over the top. Nobody really is this season. Trey Murphy, he's off the market, and anybody in the Pelicans off the market. Michael Porter Jr. is probably off the market. I don't know. Should the Warriors trade for Andrew Wiggins? Should they bring him back to the Bay Area? T for trade, P for pass. Be Mike Dunleavy, because is Mike Dunleavy even being Mike Dunleavy right now? We need somebody in that front office spot. All right. So to round out today's show, if Andrew Wiggins isn't a name, these are a couple more names that Golden State could be interested in per Bleacher Report. These are not my trade targets, but I saw an article, and I'm bringing them to your attention. DeMar DeRozan is out there. I honestly neglected to make a video about DeMar DeRozan because if you're trying to trade Jonathan Kuminga, Coop, like, do the Warriors really want to bring in, and they don't like Jonathan Kuminga's play style, do they really want to bring in DeMar DeRozan, who's like a souped-up version of Jonathan Kuminga? I don't think so. Zach LaVine's a name I could see, but he's not good, and two, the Warriors have kind of balked at all trade talks with Zach LaVine in the past couple of years, like when he was getting shopped from Chicago. Like Golden State wanted nothing to do with that, so I doubt that ends up happening. He can't defend either. MPJ, they're not going after him. I don't understand why, but it made a lot of sense before Jimmy Butler got hurt, and I think it still makes sense now that Jimmy Butler is injured as well. He would fit seamlessly into the basketball in Golden State. I do understand, though, Michael Porter Jr., if you guys have ever listened to him on a podcast, would that guy really mesh with Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, and Draymond Green in the locker room? Like, seriously, like go listen to some takes he has in society. I don't think they would have many great conversations there in the Warriors locker room. Lauri Markkanen, I don't think he's getting traded, but he was on this list, and Joe Lacob wouldn't trade pods for him. So it's a disaster. It's truly, truly a disaster. I'm telling you guys right now, things are going to get worse before they get better. I think that the series win over the Rockets is as good as it's going to get for Golden State in the next few years. Unless they pull off this fantasy bizarro world proposition that we're going to talk about on tomorrow's show, then I think it's cooked, man. It's unfortunate, but when you've made as many mistakes as Joe Lacob in this front office has, and then Jimmy Butler goes and gets hurt, you have nobody to blame but yourself. That will do it for today's show. Make sure you are subscribed to the channel. We'll keep you guys tapped in with everything you need to know as the trade deadline is less than 2 weeks away here at Warriors Today. See you guys next time, and as always, let's go Dubs.